London, March 25, 1807. In a landmark decision that will alter the course of history, the British Parliament has officially passed the Abolition of the Slave Trade Act, bringing an end to Britain's participation in the transatlantic slave trade. The passage of this law marks a significant victory for abolitionists who have fought tirelessly for decades to dismantle the inhumane trade in human lives. The abolition of the slave trade in Britain has been a long and arduous battle, spearheaded by prominent activists such as William Wilberforce, Thomas Clarkson, Granville Sharp, and the Clapham sect. These individuals, driven by moral conviction and religious principles, campaigned relentlessly against the horrors of slavery, exposing its brutality and challenging the economic arguments that justified its continuation. The movement gained momentum in the late 18th century as public awareness grew about the atrocities committed against enslaved Africans. The publication of first-hand accounts, such as Olaudah Equiano's autobiography, and the growing number of petitions against the trade helped fuel widespread opposition. The efforts of abolitionists faced resistance from powerful pro-slavery interests, particularly among merchants and plantation owners who profited from the trade. However, through persistent lobbying and compelling moral arguments, they succeeded in turning public opinion in their favor. For nearly 2 decades, William Wilberforce, a member of Parliament and devoted abolitionist, introduced bills advocating for the end of the slave trade. Despite repeated failures, he remained steadfast in his commitment, delivering impassioned speeches and presenting irrefutable evidence of the trade's cruelty. The breakthrough finally came in 1806, when Prime Minister William Grenville and Foreign Secretary Charles James Fox threw their support behind abolition. The renewed push for legislative change culminated in the introduction of the Abolition of the Slave Trade Bill in early 1807. After intense debates, the bill passed in the House of Commons with an overwhelming majority of 283 votes to 16. On March 25, 1807, the House of Lords approved the bill, and it received royal assent, officially becoming law. The Abolition of the Slave Trade Act of 1807 makes it illegal for British ships to participate in the buying, selling, or transportation of enslaved individuals. The law also imposes hefty fines on shipowners who violate the new regulations. However, while this legislation effectively ends Britain's involvement in the transatlantic slave trade, it does not abolish slavery itself within the British Empire. Enslaved people in British colonies remain in bondage, and the struggle for their emancipation will continue for years to come. The Royal Navy has been tasked with enforcing the ban by patrolling the West African coast and intercepting ships engaged in illegal slave trading. Britain's new stance is expected to have far-reaching consequences, influencing other nations to reconsider their participation in the trade. The abolitionist movement is hopeful that this marks the beginning of a broader global effort to eradicate slavery entirely. The passage of the Abolition of the Slave Trade Act has been met with celebration across Britain, particularly among abolitionists and religious groups who have long championed the cause. William Wilberforce, reflecting on the momentous occasion, expressed his gratitude to his colleagues and the British people for their support in the fight for justice. "Let us rejoice that this disgraceful trade is at last abolished," he declared, emphasizing that the work must continue until slavery itself is eradicated. Despite this victory, challenges remain. The enforcement of the law will require substantial naval resources, and there are concerns that illegal slave trading may persist through clandestine routes. Additionally, Britain must now confront the question of what to do about slavery within its colonies. The abolitionists, emboldened by this success, have vowed to continue their campaign for full emancipation. The abolition of the slave trade by Britain in 1807 represents a turning point in the global movement against slavery. While it does not bring immediate freedom to those already enslaved, it strikes a decisive blow against the system that perpetuated their suffering. The courage and determination of abolitionists have set the stage for future reforms, leading eventually to the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833, which will grant freedom to all enslaved people in the British Empire. As Britain moves forward, the world watches closely, and the fight for human rights continues. The decision made on March 25, 1807, will be remembered as a bold step toward justice, echoing the words of the abolitionist cause. "Am I not a man and a brother?"